At the political heart of London, with countless famous landmarks, the city of Westminster is one of the capital's most historic and breathtaking areas. The Houses of Parliament, the world's best example of Gothic architecture, have played host to centuries of political figures and staged events of awesome historical significance. On the west wing of the building is London's most iconic landmark, the Elizabeth Tower, formerly St Stephen's Tower, but more famously known throughout the world by the name of its bell, Big Ben. Whilst the Houses of Parliament are the official meeting place for members of Parliament and the Lords, the city of Westminster is littered with unofficial gathering spots. One of the oldest and best loved of these is St Stephen's Tavern, just across from the Palace of Westminster, opposite Westminster Abbey and, more importantly, the only pub in Parliament Square. A beautiful example of a late Victorian tavern, the pub was demolished in 1868 to make room for Westminster Tube Station and rebuilt again in 1886. In 1924, the inn expanded to incorporate its neighbouring pub, the Queen's Head, which had also stood in Cannon Row. With unique views of Big Ben and intimate nooks and crannies, St Stephen's Tavern has served as a watering hole for countless notables, including past Prime Ministers Winston Churchill, Stanley Baldwin and Harold Macmillan. Our laws may have been forged in the Houses of Parliament, but who can guess how many world-changing decisions have been made at the bar in St Stephen's Tavern? The tavern has one of only 200 division bells. The division bell, a 150-year-old tradition, calls MPs back to the chamber to cast their votes at the end of long and tedious debates that they may have decided were slightly less important than a pint of Badger beer. Once summoned by the bell, MPs have just 8 minutes to get to the division lobby to vote for or against the resolution. The division bell is located just above the bar, and tourists often mistake its ringing for the fire alarm and pour out of the pub into Parliament Square. St Stephen's lay derelict between 1989 and 2003, when it was purchased from the House of Commons by Hall and Woodhouse, a West Country brewer. Established in 1777 by Charles Hall, a Dorset farmer, Hall and Woodhouse is a family business built on originally supplying Badger beer to Wellington's army, encamped at the time on England's south coast. Registered in 1875, Badger is one of the world's oldest trademarks. Over 200 years later, Hall and Woodhouse has survived 3 world wars, including the Napoleonic, served 9 monarchs and tolerated 47 prime ministers, still thriving under the custodianship of the 7th generation of the Woodhouse family. With such a historic company comes a sensitive understanding of buildings and locales. Rather than modernising the pub, when the company refurbished the interior, they rescued and restored the original Victorian fixtures and fittings. This heady blend of politics, history and the simply stunning location makes St Stephen's Tavern a popular spot for tourists, locals and lobbyists alike. The very discreet team at St Stephen's Tavern aim to give guests a taste of great British hospitality, London's social political history and, importantly, privacy. If you're lucky, you can still see groups of huddled politicians plotting their next ascent on the greasy pole, as Disraeli called the political life.